666.
Richard, my one big thing this week, a huge thing this week, is the launch of the SpaceX, which contained a quartet of astronauts to the International Space Station on Monday, which included 2 Saudis and 2 Americans. So just really a cool story. We've got 2 Saudis on this space mission, and one of whom is the first Saudi woman to be in space. So it's just a milestone and really cool. But my one big thing, and so there's been a lot on that, not just, in the local Saudi press celebrating it, but also in the US press talking about how this is sort of a big deal. I mean, it's obviously interesting because of SpaceX and NASA SpaceX collab. But my one big thing this week, Richard, is really just honestly a video about this. It's a successful launch congratulatory video from Ambassador Michael Ratney. He's the new US ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He recorded a video message of congratulations, which is on YouTube. And actually, what I'm going to do here, Richard, is we're going to do a drop. What I'd like to do is play this greeting here. It's really short. I just think it's important for our listeners and viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, to listen to it, because it's about 1.5 minutes long. And there's some stuff in here that I think is interesting. So take a listen.
Hi, I'm Michael Ratney, the U.S. Ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. On behalf of the United States government, congratulations on the upcoming Axiom 2 launch that will take Saudi astronauts Rayana Barnawi and Ali Al-Qarni, joined by Americans Peggy Whitson and John Schofner, to the International Space Station. Many people in America probably don't realize this, but dating back to His Royal Highness Prince Sultan bin Salman Al Saud's record-setting flight on the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1985, the United States and Saudi Arabia have been partners in space exploration. Now, the first Saudi female astronaut will travel into space, the result of Saudi Arabia's remarkable transformation under Vision 2030, and a reflection of our mutual commitment to scientific collaboration and the empowerment of the female workforce. Saudi Arabia signed onto the NASA-led Artemis Accords during President Biden's visit last July. Rayana and Ali completed an intensive 9-month training program in the United States to prepare for this mission, including training at NASA's Johnson Space Flight Center. Our collaboration, along with courage, perseverance, and a spirit of adventure, have made this upcoming launch possible. The entire world will be watching AX-2 make its historic journey to the International Space Station. The 4 astronauts are showing young Saudis and young Americans that not only can they dream about the stars, but they literally can reach them. منا كلنا في السفارة الأمريكية في الرياض مبروك.
So that was Ambassador Michael Ratney. 2 things I really liked about this, Richard, and then there's one observation I'd kind of like to make. Actually, 3 things. 3 things I liked about it and 1 observation. 1, this is really good diplomacy and specifically really good leveraging of communications and media for the US. One could argue that's been kind of missing in the last few years when it comes to the US-Saudi relationship. This video that you just saw, and for listeners, you just heard it, but this is a high production quality. It sort of has a private sector feel to it. I mean, it was very clear and just well thought out. And it's beautiful. It includes sort of Ambassador Ratney and a lot of the photos of the launch and everything like that. So it just sort of seemed different than what we've been getting in recent years. It just had this sort of professional, congratulatory mention, sort of message of it, excuse me. And it just, I don't know. I really liked seeing it. I think that's been missing. And I think it's really good for the US-Saudi relationship to celebrate things like this that aren't the top level, oil security. This is like a US-Saudi thing that's good for both countries. That's just exciting. So I liked that. The second thing I liked is he mentions the Artemis Accords, which Saudi Arabia signed on the 14th of July in 2022. And essentially it just means it's non-binding, but they're participating in the Artemis program, which is an American-led effort to return humans to the moon by 2025, and the ultimate goal of expanding space exploration to Mars and beyond. So he highlights that as sort of one of the engagements between the US and Saudi Arabia that took place. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but is really cool. I think third, Richard, that I think is cool, I say 2 or 3, so 3 things I liked, is how he he said in the video you just heard, many Americans don't know this. And then he discussed Sultan bin Salman Al Saud, who was, of course, a Saudi prince and former Royal Air Force pilot who flew aboard the American STS-51G space shuttle mission decades ago. And he is now the chairman of the board of directors of the Saudi Space Commission. So just the way that this was done, and it's sort of a way that tells a larger story and adds some historical context to the current mission. It shows this is sort of like a leap forward for Saudi Arabia, but it's not the first step into space. And I think that's important for Americans to hear, whoever heard this message, that this US-Saudi space cooperation kind of has roots that go back decades. It's not like, oh yeah, we just all went to space together in 2023. It's, there's been a history of cooperation. Okay, 4 things I liked. I'm sorry, I went from 2 to 3 to 4. 4 things I liked. This is the 4th thing I liked. This is really short, but one thing I think is interesting and is that Ambassador Ratney speaks Arabic, and he spoke Arabic at the end of this video that you just heard. He sent me into YouTube to find videos of him speaking Arabic, and that's cool to see, and that's good. I think more of that will go a long way. He has some Eid greetings on YouTube that I think are really cool to listen to. So this is just a really cool video, and I think it was a good moment for the U.S. to celebrate. And I think the last thing that's interesting about it is that Ambassador Ratney actually has he's a lifelong career diplomat, but he actually has a strong communications background. He was special envoy to Syria. He's been a career diplomat, secretary to the Levant, Israel, and Palestinian affairs, consul general in Jerusalem, but he has been deputy assistant secretary for international media, overseeing a network of State Department media hubs throughout the world, and was a spokesman for the State Department's Bureau for Near Eastern Affairs. So he's media savvy. He's a real communicator. And I think if the United States leverages that more as these sort of wins happen between the US and Saudi Arabia, I think that goes a long way for the relationship. So this video just seemed really refreshing to me. And then that's my one big thing this week.
I liked it, and I'm glad, I'm glad when we were talking about it, it was important this be one of our one big things. Mm-hmm. I agree. That was that video had a different feel about it. It's definitely more polished, and he does a good job on it. I would add to a 5th thing. There's a couple of things that strike me about this whole enterprise, which I think is interesting. I think the really notable thing in there, one really notable thing in there, is these astronauts trained in the U.S. And it does hark back to a long-standing collaboration. I think it was 1985 when Prince Sultan bin Salman, flew with NASA. And so let me link it up with something else, which is we talk a lot about the relationship and how to move it forward. Khaled Al-Fallah, the Minister of Investment, was at the Qatar Economic Forum, and the news coming out of the Qatar Economic Forum was that the Minister of Energy, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, talked about those folks short selling oil are going to feel some pain, and so that was all the news. But he was there too, Khaled Al-Fallah, the Minister of Investment, and he said a couple interesting things. One, he said the U.S. remains the kingdom's biggest partner in terms of capital flow. And he also said it will continue to have significant influence in innovation and technology development, as well as being, financial markets being dominant there. Innovation and technology development. And this, again, it's something we talk about all the time. If it's a competition, this is where we can compete here. And this is an example, aerospace, and it's a particularly interesting example because the whole Axiom space program, which we've talked about on the show before, is fascinating to me. I mean, it's a private sector initiative to build, a space habitat, using the current International Space Station as a platform to build this out. And this is the 2nd mission. This is Axiom Mission 2. The first one went out last year. And so that's what they're doing. They're piece by piece, building out this habitat. And while doing very interesting experiments and research. And so it's really interesting. And I do think it's interesting too. And I do, between you and me, I feel a little bad for Ali Al-Qarni. Do you know who that is?
I don't. He's related to the astronaut, right?
No, Ali Al-Qarni is the other Saudi astronaut.
He's the astronaut. Okay, yeah.
He's the male astronaut. And so it's, Rayana Barnawi which is it's notable. First, Saudi woman in space. She's been getting all the press.
Yeah.
I even got a great note from a friend who sent me a picture of his grandson, who had done young kid, who had done sort of a paper rocket with all sorts of frills and stuff, but it had a picture of her on it. So it was really neat. But like I said, Ali, who's probably very capable in and of himself, is really taking second seat to Rihanna Barnawi, which is fine. But this Axiom again project is really fascinating, and I also think we talk a lot again on the show about Saudi Arabia and soft power, and how it's putting itself out there in any number of ways, sports, convening, all sorts of things. This is another one. You buy a seat on this flight. They paid significant amounts of money. There's speculation it's $50 million a seat, but and then obviously you have training, and obviously it's still a professional operation, and these are real, trained professionals going up. But it's a smart move. It's a very smart move, not only in terms of developing your own space program, but also in terms of moving it along really, really quickly, and also getting some very positive public relations. And I'm not being cynical about this, but this is, I'm being practical. And one more thing, if we're talking about women and really impressive things, the person flying this flight is Peggy Whitson. And she's like one of the greatest of all times in the American space program. She's the most experienced astronaut with 665 men and women, 665 days in space and 10 spacewalks. And she retired. She thought she was done in 2017, but then they brought her on for the Axiom program. And she's back up there, and they're doing some fascinating stuff. So she's a star in and of herself. So anyway, there's so many good. There's the story, and then there's so many other good elements that are coming out of the story, and and not the least of which is it's US and Saudi Arabia working together on important technological space. So it's good stuff.
Just brilliantly said. This is a good story. Like, this is a really good story. There's a lot of good storylines coming out of a larger good story, and I think it's a great point to make, because you don't have purely good stories like this as much, or it doesn't seem like that, and so it's like. Yeah, I mean, we're pumped about this. I'm pumped about this. Peggy comes out of retirement. She spent 2 years of her life in space, basically, and she comes back for this thing. This thing is awesome. Is back.
Yeah. This is like when Michael Jordan went to play baseball. She said, "No, I'm back."
Yeah, I'm back. That was really cool when Jordan went to go play baseball, and I was like, actually, I'm going to go back to basketball and win a couple more championships. Like, unbelievable. Anyway, great story here. Congrats to the astronauts. Congrats to the space programs of both countries.